Hello there, on behalf of Astro Matrix, my name is Marcelle, and today I'm going to talk to you about Saturn Return. And we're going to explore the Saturn Return that happens around the age of 28 to 30, as well as the Saturn Return, the second Saturn Return that happens around the age of 58 to 60. And for those of you that are still around, then there's the third Saturn return, which happens around the age of 89 to 90. I'm sure there are a few cases for those that have happened at 120, but let's stick with the first two. So first of all, just to understand a little bit better, Saturn is known as the planet of limitation and restriction. It wants responsibility. It's connected to the father. It's like the father figure that is making sure that you are doing things properly, following things by the book. As my father always used to say, if you do the right thing happens. You do the wrong thing happens. So Saturn is a period in our lives where we start experiencing the impact of Saturn in its transit, returning back to, it's done a full cycle over the last 30 years. It takes about 28 to 30 years to come back to its exact position in conjunction with Saturn in our natal chart. So depending on what area of our house Saturn lies natally determines the area of our life that is generally impacted. So it's useful to know where Saturn does lie in your chart, as well as what sign it's in. So Saturn coming back to its place in the natal chart around the age of 28 to 30 is generally a period when we are starting to experience the limitations of life. For the simple reason, and this is the effect of what Saturn is about, it's about creating limitation within our life in order for us to be forged into the direction that we should be heading and to assume a level of responsibility. So the first 30 years of our lives, and let's explore the 20s specifically. Around the age of 21, maybe younger, you've just left school, you've left university, and then comes a decision about what you should do. And most people have been conditioned to believe that when they leave home, when they leave school, it's about finding a good job and, getting into the payroll and starting to save up and have medical insurance and mortgage, etc., and things like that. There's such an identification within our culture as to that generally, for most people, being the perfect path to follow. However, up until the 30s, it's not a period of slotting into that role. It's more important to get away from whatever conditioning it is that you experience growing up as a child through school, through your parents, your social environment, and ideally to get away from all of that, to experience another paradigm, a new context, another perspective, in order to get a clearer sense of who it is that you are. So if we have to take two people, the one gets stuck into a corporate 9-to-5 environment that's working for a big multinational company, whereas the other person heads overseas and does a year of traveling through Asia. What's happening is this person is experiencing another aspect of themselves that they did not know existed, because they are being challenged and impacted through dynamics beyond their conditioning. It forces them to think about things in new ways, to interact with other cultures and experiences that would not ordinarily happen had they then to transition from their university into a 9-to-5 environment. So the first 30 years are very much about finding out who you are. It's not about limitation just yet. It's about exploring, who am I? What am I here to do? Exploring what those potential seeds are that you want to plant, so that by the time you do get to the age of 28 to 30, more of a sense of responsibility starts kicking in, and depending on where that Saturn is in your chart, discerns the areas that you'll be investing your time and energy and experiencing what can potentially feel like a restriction. So Saturn as the restrictor or the limiter is simply a process of, it's almost like how a diamond is created. If you create contraction or restriction or pressure over time, this diamond is shaped. It's created into a diamond, and it's a little bit like that for us. So as we go through this process of intensity, we are then able to make clearer decisions about how to push through and really get onto our paths that are right for us. So that's generally the first Saturn return. And how you may experience it is by things not going your way. You may experience it as fears coming up. And the fears are simply because Saturn is restricting your decisions that you're wanting to making, and it's that restriction happens in order for you to work harder, in order for you to take more of a responsibility, in order for you to get clearer and discerning around what it is that you want. And obviously, depending on where it is in the chart, will give more information as to the themes that could be playing out. So for instance, in the 7th house, it's very much to do with one-on-one relationships. 10th house is very much connected to career. 4th house is very much to do with home, the inner home. And so it goes. And so then as we go through our first Saturn return, ideally in an ideal world, if we've done it properly, we have a clearer sense of the direction that we're heading in, and we start putting our energies into that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that now that you've gone through your first Saturn return, you should know exactly what you want and where you're going. But it's in a way, up until that point, it's the first real intense process that forces you to start questioning life on a whole nother level around a sense of responsibility. So after the first Saturn return, obviously we progress with life until we get to our second Saturn return, which is between the age of 58 to 60. And of course, what has happened during this process, during this time, is that the journey of life has allowed us to let go of the restrictions, the limitations, the fears, the judgments that we've held around our lives, around ourselves, up until that point. So as we age, as we progress, there's more of a lightness of being and an acceptance of self, ideally, that is able to settle in. And so the problem is that our society, culturally, it's very much conditioned to believe that as you get older, you should fear this because the body is deteriorating and the mind is deteriorating. But that's very much not the case. These should be your happiest years. You've become lighter, wiser, and less attached to things that in the past would have deeply bothered you. And sure, the body starts deteriorating, but there is more, in an ideal world, there is more of an ability to meet it with more grace and acceptance, as opposed to when you're, say, in your 40s and you find out that you have a life-debilitating disease or something as such. So in the 60s, it's the transition into the elder person, into the elder. And if one has followed one's path with authenticity and put the time and energy in, then it's no reason why it cannot be a beautifully expansive experience. And 60, it's only 60 years old. I know, so I'm 44 at the moment, and I know so many people who are in their 60s who, they've just had children, or they're going, motorbiking through the Himalayas, or starting up new projects. There's that amazing lady, I think she's in her 90s now, she's gone through a third Saturn return, and every decade she's starting a new project, she's starting a new business, a clothing label, playing a new instrument, becoming a tango teacher, becoming a yoga teacher, so that at 90 she's like in splits and speaking 5 languages and has traveled all around the world. And so it's all to do with our state of mind, and the more that we can allow the fears and the constrictions of Saturn, the more we can meet meet it and allow it to really penetrate us so that we can see through the illusion of it, the more we can free ourselves from the expectations of what we think is right for us versus what is right for us. And so by the time one gets to 90, for the third Saturn return, for those of us that get there, it's a real process of letting go. It's such a deep letting go at that point. You know, we've gone through the round of Saturn having come our way twice, and at that point there's such a deep release that happens and such a deep acceptance. So I hope this shed some light on your situation, and it would be wonderful if you can share which house Saturn lies in for you. Have you gone through your Saturn return? Are you experiencing your second Saturn return? And maybe you want to share with us how that's going for you. So thank you for your time. If you did enjoy this content, please like and subscribe to our channel, and wishing you all the best with your journey. Bye for now.